Welcome back to another episode of the House Husband Diaries. As always, I am your host, Carter C. And today we are moving along the political spectrum. And we're asking the question, why is there no strong third party in the United States of America? Now, I asked this question because in my previous video, I talked about career politicians and the Republicans and the Democrats behind the scenes sort of being one and the same. Now, whether you agree or not with that statement or that assertion, I would venture a guess that if you don't agree with that, if you really think that the Democrats and the Republicans are very different behind the scenes as well as in the news, I would venture a guess that you would be okay with a third party anyway, because that would just be more competition. So in effect, competition just brings out the best in ideas and people in business. And so having a viable third party would still be a boon to our politics and our political system, because there would be more competition, which means people wouldn't get as complacent because they're, what do you call them? They're, I just went blank. You know how that happens? But their constituents, there you go. That's what I was looking at, or the word I was looking for. They wouldn't be as complacent because their constituents would have another option. So if you're in a very Republican district, you don't really maybe work quite as hard because you just know that there's a lot of Republicans in your district, and so maybe you get a little lazy. Likewise, if you're a Democrat and you're in a very heavily Democratic district, you may get lazy and kind of just not work as hard because you know that there's no really viable Republican that's going to win any votes. But if there was an intermediate party, some sort of third party that had different ideas, or maybe a melding of the two ideas, then maybe with that competition, it would keep the incumbents on their toes every election, rather than sort of coasting and being elected 20 years in a row or what have you. So I say all of that in that I see a growing amount of dissatisfaction across America. I talk to Republican friends of mine. I talk to Democrat friends of mine. And there's this increasing divide that the news talks about, we talk about. It hasn't, true friends haven't lost any true friends over any political discussions or debates. But acquaintances on the periphery that don't really truly care about who I am as a person, and vice versa. Those acquaintances I've experienced those being, casualties of the increasing divide, the increasingly harsh rhetoric that comes along with current politics in America. But what I think is interesting is with the overall dissatisfaction in the job that our politicians are doing, I find it interesting that there hasn't been a strong third party to emerge. So I know there's a fair number of people, and a lot more people than I remember, that are saying they're libertarian. I've worked with some, I've talked with some, emailed with some, whatever, that have seen these videos, and they say, hey, join the party. You're not, you're not Republican, you're not Democrat, be libertarian. And I do agree with some of the things that libertarians say. However, libertarians are not the most inspiring people. And I'm not saying that to any libertarian individual. I'm saying I haven't seen a libertarian candidate that is overly inspiring. I was talking to a guy during the 2016 election that I worked with, and we were talking about the way the 2016 election was going, and with Clinton and Trump. He even ordered a MAGA hat, however you say that, Make America Great Again hat, and would wear it at work, and he was just real, loud, and he's a real jovial guy, fun guy. But when it came time for election day, he told me that he had voted Libertarian because he was Libertarian, and I thought that was just fascinating. That everybody that would see him, work with him, whatever, assumed he voted for Trump because he had a MAGA hat and he would wear it all the time, and it was just, he just loved it. But then when it came time to cast his vote, he was Libertarian, and he just said, I know this guy's not going to win, but I'm Libertarian at heart, and so that's where I'm casting my vote. And I thought that was really interesting because it seems that Libertarians are so focused on their ideology that it doesn't matter whether or not their vote counts in the larger scheme, as far as, your vote could swing one way or the other. So if you were a Libertarian but you agreed more with Hillary Clinton, that group of Libertarian voters that swung or swings maybe slightly more left of center could have swung the 2016 presidential election. And vice versa, Trump won, but if Hillary had won by a narrow margin, then there's a group of Libertarians that may swing a little more right. And I really don't know how Libertarians would line up if they're just so ideological along a Libertarian line that they don't say, well, I would swing more conservative or more liberal. And so I don't really know if there's a swing there. So if any of you are diehard Libertarians watching this, send me an email, carter@hhdiaries.com, or comment on the video if you don't mind, but just, let me know about that because I don't find that there's much of an inspiration coming out of the Libertarian, quote unquote movement. And I don't see really the Libertarian Party becoming that strong independent third party because it's not really, I don't really see it as a middle of the road. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's things about libertarianism that I just don't know, I'm ignorant of. So help me out there. But it seems like libertarians are so focused on quote unquote liberty, right, and the personal freedoms that it's almost a lack of government at all levels. And I don't think that's practical because we have to have some sort of government. And I agree with you that it's too big. And I disagree with the left-leaning folks that would say it's not big enough because there's already too many people on the government payroll. And I would like to see a decrease in income taxes. So that means we need to pay less people on the government payroll. But so what I think is interesting is that, and I said this in previous videos, one or two at least, is I would love to see, like, what are the main issues? So I put out a video a while ago that said, this is how I vote. I choose one main issue and maybe a secondary issue that I think the incoming president will be able to work on and possibly put a solution in place for that number one issue over the next 4 years that our country faces. So I look at whatever candidate is saying, this is my number one issue, and I agree with that. Because I really don't think that a president I don't think he can act necessarily anything on that main issue unless Congress agrees with him or her. And then the other thing is, I certainly don't think that a president can get 20 things done in 4 years that are major issues, right? It's going to take a long time to write laws to try to cover all the bases and reform Social Security, healthcare, all of those things. Like, you need to be like, this is my one goal for 4 years, because it's going to take the majority of 4 years to get it enacted. And then you better hope that you win the re-election and you can let it have another 4 years to let those policies play out to see if they actually work. Because if you lose, then they may undo the policies, which is what we're seeing a lot of in Washington right now is people do something and then they undo it 2 years or 4 years later, and we're getting nowhere. We haven't done anything. That was kind of my opening point in the last political video is that there really hasn't been anything revelatory coming out of Washington in the last 40 years that's moved us into a better position. And I don't consider socialist healthcare, single payer to be a step in the right direction. So we'll just agree to disagree on that. I had a really interesting conversation with a Spanish couple last summer. We were scuba diving and overseas, and we started talking about Trump and the presidency and what the European kind of view of Trump as president and, in America. And it was fascinating to see some, this is just one individual's perspective, but, there's one individual from Spain and she and her husband, and she was just like, our health care is great. Socialism is, they're basically socialists in Spain. And she was like, it's great. And her husband was like, actually, anybody in Spain that can afford health care in America, they fly to America. And she was like, but they don't have to. And he was like, but they do. So it's obviously better in America. And point by point, she was like, it's really a good place. And he was like, yeah, but, people go to America because it's still better than socialism. And he works for an American company. It was really funny, but I won't name names. But the conversation is we should not, as Americans, be looking to Europe for for the future, right? We left Europe a long time ago to start America because we didn't want to be under kings, and now we don't want to move towards socialism. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. Disagree with me all you want. Let me know your reasons of why I'm wrong. I think there's a better way. I think we can help people out socially, but not be socialist. I think there's a personal responsibility, and I don't really know how to phrase it all, because when you say I think we should help people out, people are like, "Oh, you're socialist," but I'm like, I'm totally not socialist. And so then when I say, "Oh, well, I believe in free market," like there needs to be some amount of free market and capitalism, then people are like, "Oh, you're just a capitalist and you're just a greedy bastard." And it's like, no, like there's got to be some middle of the road where we're free market, but we have a personal responsibility to not just rape and pillage the bottom line and just pay people the least amount. That we respect people for a job that they're doing, not just to make us rich, but we respect people and we pay them a living wage. And then we help those less fortunate people out because maybe they didn't get good genes. Maybe they do have health problems. There needs to be repercussions for lazy people. They shouldn't just get free rides in life. But how do you determine that? And I think that's very complicated. So I'm not saying that this is an easy conversation and I have all the answers. Not at all. But I do think there's room in the American political system to have some sort of middle of the road party that holds the Democrats and the Republicans in check and provides competition. Not a socialist party, not a communist party. I don't think the libertarians are it, and I don't know if there is such a thing. So I'm lobbing this, I'm throwing this out here. It's a hand grenade into the discussion, right? I call them conversation hand grenades. And I'll do that sometimes at dinner parties and stuff, is when I see some people talking and they get kind of like serious or whatever, I just take this idea, and I'll just kind of lob it. Not this particular one, but whatever pertains to the conversation. And then I just kind of lob it, and then I just watch it, and I just watch it explode, and I just love it. It's just great. People get all flustered and stuff, and you're just like, all right, y'all have a good night. It's childish, I know. It's childish. But, there's a lot worse things you can do for entertainment. So I wonder if there's a few main issues, like a few major issues that people could come together and say, I'm not 100% sold on the Democratic Party. I'm not 100% sold on the Republican Party. I'm not 100% sold on the Libertarian Party. But you know what? I do think this issue is really important. And I would put this issue as the most important issue. Or I would put this issue as the most important issue. And then other people could say, you know what, that's not really my most important issue, but it's like a top 2 or 3. And you go, okay, hey, now we're starting to kind of put together a series of ideas to say maybe here are the top 5 issues that we can all agree on. And maybe some are more left-leaning, maybe some are more right-leaning, maybe some are more libertarian-leaning. What have you? I don't know. But just a few issues like living wage jobs. I don't mean set an unrealistic minimum wage, right? I don't think if you're a barista at Starbucks, you should make $75,000 a year. I just don't. I also don't think that the price of housing in Seattle should be like what it is. I think it's crazy. The people who have made all their money over the last 50 years in owning property have fought they have created and the run to cities too. I mean, we've kind of all done it as people that move to cities, a flock to cities away from the heartland and farms and stuff. But I feel like the prices are they're artificial. And the people that sell, they're raising it, but they're trying to get out. I feel like there's a lot of Ponzi schemes, a lot of smaller Ponzi schemes within, and everybody's kind of complicit in it. But we should know that there's just housing that is outrageous. And I mean, Charleston, South Carolina was getting there. I mean, a brand new stick-built home it was like 13 miles outside of Charleston. It still had a Charleston address, which is crazy. But I think we were about 13 miles out. It was almost $300,000 when we bought it. We sold it for over $300,000. And you're starting to talk about pricing a lot of people, a lot of good, hardworking, middle-class people out of houses when you start getting into the $300,000 to $400,000 range. It becomes a burden on someone, a family with a $75,000 a year income, a $60,000 a year income, even a $100,000 a year income. You're starting to price middle-class families out of housing at $350,000, obviously $450,000, $500,000. I mean, it's insane. And you shouldn't. Where are you going to get teachers? Where are you going to get police officers? Where are you going to get baristas? Where are you going to get all of these, waiters and waitresses? Where are you going to get all of these jobs, these people to do these jobs when the housing prices are just outrageous? I mean, it's an issue. What is the answer to it? I mean, obviously it's longer than what I want this video to be. But I also think, like I mentioned in the previous video, hunger in the U.S. I mean, there's got to be something. One of the interesting things about hunger in the U.S. is, one, we grow more than enough food to feed every mouth in this country, period. That's not even up for debate. Period. If we wanted to, if the companies making the food, the farmers growing it and selling the food, if we wanted to, we could have no hungry mouths in America, period. Not even, that's not even up for debate. But what I find so interesting is these nonprofits that like the food banks and all of that jazz, their marketing is just like business marketing. We fed more people than ever. Donate because there's, it's like, oh, now you want me to feel good about there being an increasing number of homeless people or starving people. And oh, I need to give you more food. More of my money needs to go to you because now there's more mouths to feed. Like, aren't you taking government money, which is our taxes anyway? So haven't we already paid into what you're doing? And can't you just buy a farm that produces food? I know this is really basic and it moves us back like 150 years, but can't you just buy, instead of taking canned food and food from everybody else, can't you just like buy a farm And it may be a big one if you're, in a city and you have a lot of homeless people and a lot of hungry people that you feed. But in North Carolina, we have tens of thousands, millions of acres probably. Who knows how much it is? I have no idea. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland. I have no idea what it is, but it's a lot. I mean, just buy a farm, employ people to farm it, and then that land can feed those people in perpetuity. It happens all the time, everywhere in the world. Why are we donating more money and more canned goods? I mean, we can solve problems like that. Government spending and national debt. It's like crack. No career politician wants to lower taxes because then that lowers their budget and then they can't spend as much and then they can't tell you how good they are because they spent so much money in their district or they got so much money. If they make the pie smaller, then their piece is going to be smaller. And then somebody, their political, competition is going to say, see, last year he got, or she got $1 million for us and did these projects. This year it's $500,000. And they're scared of losing their career politician job. And it would be much better if we lowered our taxes and then they didn't put as much money through whatever because we had our own, and then we just need to make better decisions with our money and stop buying cheap plastic toys from China. You know what I mean? If you didn't get that joke, you're probably not going to like most of my videos, so it is what it is. What other ideas? So lowering taxes, getting our national debt under control, getting our government spending under control, hunger in the U.S., jobs, livable wages. What are some other things, major issues that you see in the world that politicians or presidential candidates aren't discussing? Healthcare is one that I think I mentioned earlier. It's crazy how much money we spend on pharmaceuticals, and yet very little is said about that and how much they gouge Americans. And yet, our food is unhealthy. A lot of the fast food, a lot of those sweets and packaged goods, and then people get on medicines because they're not eating right, because of the cheap, there have been wonderful documentaries on all of that. But at some point, I feel like our politicians and our government is there to help make those decisions, to help curb the corporations that are doing a lot of these decisions without social responsibility. And I know it's a slippery slope, right? Because you don't want a government to come in and then just enforce everything. That's why we have agencies out the wazoo. And so it's almost an oxymoron to say that there should be some sort of government oversight, yet we want a smaller government and lower government spending, right? There's some, but I think there's a sweet spot that we've missed. We've gone too far into too big of a government, and yet the government's not really working as well as it could for the people. And so I think that's what kind of that debate and that discussion that I'm having here. And I hope you'll join. If you're 23 minutes into this video, you have joined it. And then the last thing that I'll say is maybe it isn't even lowering government spending. Maybe it's just changing the way that our government spends our tax dollars. So maybe there's some sort of 10-year plan that kind of encompasses all of that. But I'd love to hear what your ideas of major issues that America will face over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And then if you think that there's room for a third party or that it would be a good idea. Obviously, I do. Hopefully that doesn't make me, a target for other people, for political people. I'm not coming for your job. I'm really not. I just think it's an interesting conversation when I look at the Democrats and the Republicans and I see just so much of the same. Their public personas are very different, but I go back to what was it, 2004, when John Kerry was running against George Bush. I think it was 2004. I might be off on that by 4 years. I think it was 2004. And John Kerry was the Democratic nominee, and George Bush was the Republican nominee. And yet they were both members of a secret society of Skull and Bones at Yale. Now, there's only a dozen or so people in Skull and Bones every year. So that's a very small fraternity. And I highly doubt those people have that big a difference in their group of friends and what kind of policies and who's going to benefit from those policies. If either one of those guys had won. So one of these days I'll tell you a story. Remind me in the comments and other stuff, but I'll tell you a story about New Year's Eve in Los Angeles a long time ago. But this video is long enough. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts. Love to hear them. Love having this conversation. It's another episode of the House Husband Diaries. We're almost to 100. Thanks so much for watching and liking and subscribing and being a part of the community. Have a great day. Until tomorrow morning.